All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining the OCP 2020 virtual event. And my name is Alan Chan, and I'm here representing Inspur to talk about open storage platform with Samsung. Before I really go into the entire detail on the engineer aspect of this Samsung collaboration, I want to give you the reason why we're doing this. So last year, Inspur joined Intel in 2019 OCP Global Summit, and we contributed what we call the first ever four-socket cloud optimized solution based on the Cascade Lake CPU. So when that time happened, a lot of people asking the question, why are you doing this and what's the benefit to the end user? And then how do you see this particular design going forward down the road? Because everything was mainly talked about in OCP. Sometimes it focused on Open Rack, sometimes it focused on Project Olympus, those very unique designs. But many times, like when we talk to the audience, they feel really enjoying the technology investment of those new rack definition. But some reason many of the people just couldn't really afford to adapt those. Rather, they have to stick with the 19-inch form factor. So what happened last year is when we introduced the 19-inch form factor 2U box, what we call the cloud optimized four socket, we have received a lot of feedback saying, hey, this is definitely something I was looking for too, right? Other than the traditional Open Rack and Project Olympus topic, because this gives them, most of the people, the opportunity to actually validate some POC based on the existing infrastructure they have. So originally last year, we tried to target this for cloud computing. And if you happen to have seen the keynote in 2020, I kind of mentioned it. There's actually a lot of people outside the OCP community was actually paying attention to what we were doing. So there's a fintech enterprise and all these other people was actually adapting the four-socket platform outside of OCP. And it has become like such a successful adoption story for us. So this year, we were so happy we were able to pretty much do the same thing with Samsung, right? The Samsung collaboration, when we first talked to Samsung, we mutually agreed saying, hey, we should do something that's easy for most of the customers to adapt, right? And then for them to easy to get on a POC. Because when new technology comes up, sometimes it takes a time to ramp up. And then most of the customers that we have, they want to have a POC to run it against the conventional infrastructure they have and see what's the benefit, or what's the real benefit out of it, right? So that's the reason why we have this collaboration. And when Samsung comes to us, they say, oh, yeah, Flash has to change, right? The storage side of the infrastructure has been changed so much. And then there's a new technology and new density requirement coming out of the industry was asking for something a little bit more dense. And we mutually agree, hey, we want to do it in 19 form factor, but we also mutually agree that we want to do it in a massive value production. We don't want to bring in something new that totally something new to the customer. And then they have no idea what the real benefit, and then they have no way to compare what the benefit of this compared to the conventional infrastructure. So this is exactly what we did. We picked the most highest value 1U product that Inspur has, right? What we call the 5180. And we have multiple generation already. This is a 5th generation product that we have. So as you can see, it's a 1U compute box, very conventional. It has either 10 small form factor or 4 large form factor. But we just introduced a new flavor to this chassis, which has 32 ES.1, which create either you can do a general computing on this or a little bit of archive storage or Spark, Hadoop, or you can do a completely hot cache kind of infrastructure inside of 1U with 32 ES.1. So that's the idea behind all this. First of all, pick something easy for the audience to adopt, a POC, if they don't have anything existing with a NVMe over Fabric or high cache storage. We want to pick something easy to adapt, right? So the 19-inch form factor was picked. And second of all, we want to bring the customer something they can easily compare their existing infrastructure with. And of course, high value, high quality. When you have new technology, you don't want to have all these different variables in place, right? Is the chassis new? Is the compute motherboard is brand new? And all these different variables create a very challenging time for our customer to create a POC environment that could really pinpoint out and then identify what their problem is. So that's why we're doing all this. So 19-inch form factor, very reliable system, okay? So let me talk a little bit about the infrastructure in terms of the compute, right? Like I mentioned earlier, this will eventually be contributed to OCP before 2021 because we have the next generation CPU inside of this particular design, right? And we won't be able to introduce that until the CPU is ready. So if you look at this, it's a very conventional way of any one unit that's out there. The only difference is probably we have additional 32 ES.1 with a PCI switch inside. It's going to be PCI Gen 4 ready. And then you have a lot of fans inside just to cool it down because the NVMe ES.1 is going to be extremely hot when you're running a high performance out of it. But as you can see on the back of it, we have a very new mod balance PCI slot for you. Imagine you have CPU 0 with half of the ES.1 connected. That's 16 of them. And CPU 1 with another 16 of them connected. You want to make sure each of the CPU has a PCIe by 16, right? That will be Gen 4 by the time we launch the product, and you have enough throughput to push this data outside of the fabric, external networking fabric. So that's the entire basic concept of why we want to do this. And then of course, Samsung is creating a software stack on the x86, and then we're also working, Inspur is also working with third-party partners to make sure we have various solutions that can choose from in terms of the software stack as well. So give a little bit more detail on this. This is how the 32 ES.1 is going to be created in terms of the backplane design, and all this will be contributed to the OCP community for any fine-tuning, feedback, and inputs. And what we believe is this is going to be the beginning of the conversation when we start talking at ES.1, because the community, the smartest people in the industry or the audience today will give us feedback, and we'll still continue to fine-tune it, right? Throughout the time that after the introduction. And then that's what makes product even more perfect, right? When we first initially had this idea, we're cooking this in the lab, and we haven't really have a really use case out there in the world. But once we have this product available in the OCP platform, and then I believe all the people in the audience will be able to actually give us feedback and comments and things that they like or they don't like, and then we'll welcome those inputs as well. So next thing is how this ES.1 form factor put into the chassis so small and impacted. So we have working with Samsung to create what we call more like a ES.1 SSD with tray, right? It's a little bit fixture for you to access it, hot swappable. So it's nothing brand new, it's nothing creative, but it's just the easy of the service is very similar to the U.2 drive that you have today. Okay. Like I said earlier, we definitely want to make sure this system is new mod balance, right, for any kind of application that you are having. And then of course, CPU has become definitely a lot more powerful. So we feel like 16 ES.1 will be enough, and then for you to exaggerate or your CPU power, right, performance, and everything like that. And then, like I said, we're working very closely with Samsung and then a lot of third-party partner to make sure we have sufficient third-party software stack that could be compatible with this system to make sure you can actually run it. All right. before I kind of end this presentation, I want to talk about ES.1 as in general, right? So on the left-hand side is what we call the most flexible 1U that meets all compute and storage requirement, of course, with the hot cache, right? This is the product I was talking about. But of course, there's people in the industry feel like, hey, there's not necessary to have an x86 running software on it. They want to make sure there's no software is slowing down the latency, and then they want to use a selection card or ASIC to actually produce a very streamlined performance. And then that a lot of time those are the CSP or the third party ASIC vendor who has solutions that they feel like the end user was really looking for. So for Inspur, as we also believe NVMe is going to be a trend down the road. So we also have a product on the right hand side, what we call the very NVMe fabric centric, and then you have two PCI slot in the back. You can have multiple different vendor slots out there as creating an ASIC card, like Broadcom, Mellanox, and Bluefield, and things like that. So we're working very closely with all these partners in the ecosystem to make sure we have a product that's going to be available for you to compare, right, head to head. For instance, the one on the left hand side was the x86, or the one on the right hand side with the basic specialized ASIC. So the goal for Inspur is actually provide a platform, a way for our customer to compare different technology. That's also the reason why we like OCP so much, because everything was everything was exposed under the sun, and everyone can prepare who has better technology, and in fact, the technology will win your business for sure. All right. So thank you for listening to the presentation. The last one, I want to kind of recycle what I say on the keynote of this year and what Inspur's envision on the entire OCP community. First of all, we want to make sure we have a strong community going forward, because just by collectively having all these smart people in the industry to give us feedback and then jointly cooperating, that's the way we can actually perfect our designs, right? So we definitely welcome all those voice and comments or even feedbacks from the community. And then, like I said earlier, we have been hosted the first OCP China Day in 2019, and OCP is definitely become the global event. We have reached beyond just the standard OCP members, and we have definitely a lot of people outside of OCP is looking at us and paying attention to what we're doing. Okay. And of course, adoption behind hyperscaler. We all love to talk about a hyperscaler story, but definitely we want to take some of the building blocks that could potentially put it into the 19-inch form factor, and taking some of the lesson learned when we were in OCP, when we were all these different community, and take the lesson learned and pass it down to what we call the enterprise customer, right? The next wave CSP. They can also enjoy those learning without reinventing some of the wheels that we already created. So I think that's the most important part about having the adoption beyond hyperscaler, because every different scale has different problem sets that we have to solve together, right? And of course, technology pipelines. As a company, Inspur has been driven to actually provide any kind of platform or any kind of latest and greatest technology that's out there in the world, from the silicon idea to any concept to a productized product that could allow customers to actually have their hands on and set up a POC for. So I think that's our vision, and we feel like that's also our mission to grow the community together. So again, thank you for your time, and then I hopefully will talk to you guys very soon about this, and then we can duplicate a successful story that we have done last year on the Crane Mountain, the 4-socket cloud optimized platform. Thank you again.